Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. This episode of the Saturday Conversation brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. This episode brought to you by MyBookie and the folks there. Make sure you're in the game with our friends over at MyBookie. A lot of the lines and point spreads we bring you in this game, or all of them, will be coming from mybookie.ag. Big game, obviously, today. The Longhorns take on the dreaded Sooners. Everybody hates Oklahoma that's listening to this, I hope, or else you're in the wrong place. It's time for the Longhorns to show the Sooners who's who. Texas right now favored by 14 and a half points. There's a over-under of roughly 50. Guys, Texas should be the one in the driver's seat here. Do y'all feel that way about this game just hours away?
Absolutely. I absolutely think so. I think this Texas defense is legit. You've not seen plays leak out. You've not seen explosive pass plays with this secondary. I think the pass rush will make life difficult for Michael Hawkins this afternoon. But more than that, you look at it from an offensive perspective. You get Quinn Ewers back. You have a better offensive line. You have a plethora of wide receivers to score and to gain yardage in a number of different ways right now. On paper, Texas is significantly better than Oklahoma. They have the quarterback advantage. They have the offensive line advantage. They have the playmaker advantage. In the history of this game, that normally equates to a victory. Now, weird things happen. We saw weird things happen a year ago. But there's no Dylan Gabriel to save Oklahoma down the stretch in this game. And I think an environment like this, a unique ball game in stadium that Michael Hawkins will be walking into on Saturday, it's too much week one or week two for a starting quarterback that young. I like Texas big in this game.
What about you, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be this confident going into the Texas OU game. It actually is unsettling being this confident going into the game. And it's mostly because of what we've seen from Texas, but also by how inept that offense has been for Oklahoma. Guys, if you look at 20-plus yard plays generated, they're the fewest in the Power Four. I mean, think about that. They are 130th in explosive play rate in the country. Oklahoma. I mean, Mike Leach, turning over in his grave. That's crazy. That's wild. I can't fathom that. So to me, that's the biggest thing. And then that going up against how good the Texas defense has been, I don't see how they move the football. They're 129th in third down conversion rate. So they don't convert to move the football. They don't get explosive plays to move the football. They got a freshman that's going to be starting for the first time in the history of the OU program in the Texas OU game. I don't know how they solve all the issues and problems that they have offensively versus Texas in the Texas OU game. It could happen. They had a bye week, but I don't know how it happens. But the Texas offense versus OU defense, I got a lot of respect for it. Got a lot of respect for Venables. I think for them, you protect Quinn Ewers, you protect the football, and if you can eliminate the negative plays, you'll blow this game wide open, because that's what the Oklahoma defense feeds off of. They're top 5 in takeaways, top 10 in sacks, top 15 in tackles for loss. If they generate negative plays, they generate takeaways, this is going to be a ball game. If they don't, it won't.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting to me is both of you guys, I want to come back to the Texas offense versus the Oklahoma defense, but both of you guys started off mentioning the OU offense versus the Texas defense and just not really being able to see where the Sooners might make some level of hey, Taylor Tatum is expected back for this game, the talented freshman running back for the Sooners. That's a positive. Deion Burks, we got news on Thursday that was kind of confirmed that he's expected to be out. That's the OU wide receiver that was actually their leading wide receiver this year. He's now their top 4 from the preseason are all out. So I think it's funny how y'all talked about what was perceived as maybe the question marks heading into the season, the OU offense and the Texas defense, and how y'all feel pretty confident that the Texas defense has answered that call more so than the OU team to give Texas a decided advantage in that category. Flipping on its head, and you talk the Texas offense versus the OU defense, which are the two strengths of the team. Here's my question for y'all. Do y'all think Texas's offense has improved this year? Do you think the OU defense has improved this year? Or Do you think Texas' offense a year ago was maybe better? What are y'all's thoughts on that? Because I'm pretty sure OU's defense is better this year. I feel pretty confident about that. They're more opportunistic. They're playing really well. A lot of sacks, as you mentioned, a lot of turnovers, tackles for loss, etc. Do y'all think Texas holds the advantage, its offense versus the Sooner defense? And is Texas' offense better this year than it was a year ago, or about the same?
I think it's deeper. I think there's more elements to the Texas offense this year, especially when you start to add in everything from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 4, including a tight end on the field at the same time. It feels like it's faster, there's quicker, there's more deep shots that we've seen, even with Quinn against Michigan. The running game probably a little weaker, right? And that's because you don't have your elite running back, and there's been issues holding on the ball, receiving the football out of the backfield. You don't have that Jonathan Brooks or CJ Baxter even to that extent right now in that backfield. With that said, the Oklahoma defense, it's very similar right now to what we saw a year ago. Only Maryland has more turnovers from the beginning of 2023 to this week right now than Oklahoma. That tells you they're pretty consistent in one thing, and that's taking the football away. It was the key to winning the game a year ago when there was 4 turnovers, including that goal line stop where Texas had 4 chances to punch it in from the 1. There was the fumble at midfield, the interception coming out of your red zone, the interception going into your red zone. And that's kind of where I sit right now. Is the Oklahoma defense better than it was a year ago? I don't know. I think it should be assumed so, because a lot of your key pieces are returning. They're more experienced. They've played college football longer. But at the same time, we just watched Auburn drop 480 yards on them a week ago. And for that reason, yeah, they're talented. But if Texas limits turnovers, what's to stop this Texas offense? Right now, I don't know. I don't think that there will be much success against this Texas offensive line with Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks on either side. That's going to stymie whatever pass rush R. Mason Thomas comes up with, because right now he's the one threat you got to take care of. I still lean that Texas offense has an advantage if they take care of the football.
What about you, Rod?
I would say, man, you can. Let's say it's a push. Let's just say, hey, they cancel each other out. The Oklahoma defense, the Texas offense, if that is the case. That's why I kind of started looking at the matchup of how dominant the Texas defense has been so far, as compared to how inept and and how lackluster the Oklahoma offense has been. Because I think Sark can take more chances now. See, when you really can, if you're looking at your defense versus a traditional Oklahoma offense, what we've seen the last 20 years, you be like, oh man, no, we got to make sure that every possession counts. We got to make sure we're getting points out of these drives. At least it's got to be a long drive. You got to get something out of it. I think Sark can take more chances in this Texas OU game than he's taken in a lot of OU games. Kind of going back to the one a couple of years ago where they blew him out and shut him out, because their offense can't threaten you. They don't pose a threat. Guys, they got 8 20-plus yard pass plays on this season. 8 of them, okay? ULM and Michigan have fewer. That's what we're talking about. The same situation. Now, ULM actually, they're 4-1, so I hate on ULM, but you get my point, right? They don't have, there's no verticality. There's no vertical threat. DB's gonna be sitting on routes. Now they may, if I'm them, I'm probably gonna throw some double moves in there early, start blocking, go early, flea flickers early. Texas is gonna be sitting on routes. They're gonna be really aggressive and excited and emotional. So I would throw that in from the jump before Texas separates on us offensively. But I think that's why Sark could take some chances. I expect Sark to actually take him deep a couple of times early. Yeah. You might see a game plan reminiscent of that 2021. Remember Casey Thompson? Started out. Lighten them up early, those deep shots in the opening script. I expect to see some of that, because I think Oklahoma's going to be aggressive, because they know. Listen, first of all, if you're Brent Venables, what do you know about Sark? You know he's going to be pass heavy. Every big game he's pass heavy. Every game this year so far, because of the running back injuries, you've been pass heavy early on, 60-70% early game early down pass rate. So I know you're going to throw it. Ain't no way you're going to come up here and run it against me. In the Texas zone, you going to do that against me? You ain't been able to run against anybody. You going to run it against me? I mean, I would, if you're Brent Venables, he's like, I'm going to invite that. Come on, let's run the ball. Let's see if you can play bully ball against me in the Texas OU game. You'd invite that if you're him, because that actually poses less of a threat. The real threat for them is, what if Quinn gets in a rhythm? So I think they're going to be aggressive, and I think they're going to have pressure packages and exotic looks early, and they're going to be very aggressive early, because if Sark's going to throw it early, he throws rhythmic passes, quick hitters. out to the flats, to the receivers outside. Brent Venables knows this, so Brent Venables is going. He's telling his DBs, you got to beat the blocks, be aggressive, get underneath them. All right, attack mode. That's why I think for Sark, I might see him early on. Hey, take some shots, and he might do it out of 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, insulating pass protection. He might do it out of the 6-0 line package. I'll give you a quick number. I did some research. I looked at my old notes from last season. You guys know the 6-0 line package, which we have not seen basically this year.
No, Malik Agbo has not played. Yeah.
Why haven't we seen it? We've seen the last 2 years. What's going on? Why haven't we seen you deep at offensive line? Why haven't we seen the 6-0 line package? It could be because he's saving it. Could be because he's saving it, folks. Because last season, you averaged over 8 yards per play in the 6-0 line package. And you were able to run it on Oklahoma on the 6-0 line package, averaging over 7 yards per rush in the 6-0 line package. Not the red cat, not the jumbo pack. I'm talking about just a Big 11, Big 12 with Malik Agbo out there as your extra tight end. And they didn't throw it a lot. But last season, they averaged almost 12 yards per attempt throwing the football out of the 6-0 line package. Remember, they brought in Brett Bielema. He had those extra offensive line variety packages at Wisconsin, and they opened it up a little bit. But we haven't seen it. That's suspicious. Just throwing it out there. That's suspicious.
With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with our friends at mybookie.ag. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag and use promo code ONTexas to get started. This episode brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. It's MyBookie's 10th anniversary, and they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors. Bet big and bet confidently with risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you get your money back. Weekly no sweat win-win bets all season long. And sign up now using my OnTexas code to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Again, that's code ONTexas. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet. But do not wait on it because it's only available for a limited time. For those of you who've been playing with MyBookie for some time, they've got something for you as well. A brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. And as you progress through the tiers, unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. Thank you to our friends over at MyBookie. Now we're going to go in and talk a little SEC action now, Rod and CJ. There are other games, believe it or not, in college football today than just Texas OU. In the SEC alone, there's Florida going to Tennessee, Ole Miss going to LSU, South Carolina goes to Alabama. I would not want to be South Carolina after last week losing to Vanderbilt. Mississippi goes and it's going to, go to the altar of Georgia and probably get massacred. And then Missouri hosts Massachusetts. We won't worry about that last one. Let's start, though, with Florida, Tennessee. That game's at 6 o'clock on ESPN. Tennessee, I think this is interesting to me. Favored by 15, they haven't put up points on anybody in the SEC yet, guys. I mean, their offense has been kind of weak 2 weeks in a row versus the Sooners and the Razorbacks. What do y'all got in that game? CJ, I'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, this is the prime example of I don't think Tennessee is as good as people think they are, and I don't think Florida is as bad as people think they are, which means that 15-point spread feels a bit steep. Now, you could come out and point to that Alabama game against Vanderbilt and say, oh, Alabama's going to come out this week and thump South Carolina. That could absolutely be the case, but that's because they have a good quarterback. Right now, I think the jury's still out a little bit on Nico and what he provides to this offense. I think Tennessee defensively is very talented, but if they can't get up early and allow that running game to be leaned on, I think they struggle against the Florida team that has a lot of talent, right? Let's not forget, Florida will always have talent. It's all about piecing things together and having a game changer on the offense side of the ball, specifically at quarterback. Will Graham Mertz be that guy? Will DJ Lagway be that guy? I don't know, but so far the two of them have combined to at least be pretty serviceable in terms of moving the football. I'm not saying Florida's going to win this game, but I do think that game is much tighter than 15 points, the line that Vegas indicates right now. Still, Tennessee, I think, squeaks away in a low-scoring affair.
I think they win as well, and I do question the quarterback at Tennessee, the young quarterback. He just doesn't seem to have it all dialed in yet. Maybe it's his receivers. Maybe it's his offensive line. The surprising thing to me, Rod, is Billy Napier and the Florida coach. We all thought, hey, by this time he might be counting his lucky stars to even have a job. Yeah. But he seems to be navigating the waters pretty well at this point. He's only lost 2, but this would be one that is a somewhat of a rivalry game and wouldn't be real well received in Gainesville, though
No, I agree with you. It's interesting. I think the quarterbacks for Florida have performed a little bit better than we thought. I was looking at some of the stats for the SEC. Lagway, he's the most explosive passer in the SEC. All right, ahead of week 7. But look at Graham Mertz. And I remember CJ bringing it up. One of the critiques of his game was that he wasn't throwing the football downfield. It was a lot of a dink and dunk, a lot of passes, under 10 yards. But when they do throw the football downfield, that still may be the case. He's actually had a lot more success throwing the football downfield. If you look at passes of 10+ yards, he's the most accurate passer in the SEC. All right, ahead of week 7 on passes of 10+ yards, which is pretty amazing. So he's actually improved a little bit and gotten a lot more accurate with the football. And I think that is kind of sparked Florida offensively that maybe they can do. They're not totally inept there. But I think Tennessee wins because coming off of that kind of game where you were embarrassed and there's shame now that I've been there before, by the way, so if I can say it, shame inside the program because of the way you performed and being upset on the national stage, they'll bounce back. I mean, that's what good teams do. They're a good program. Their run game, though, is something to watch. That's what Tennessee's been struggling with. They can't run the ball the way they want to right now.
Yeah, they don't have a great – they lost too much on their offensive line, I think, than most people actually recognize. I would add this for them. If this game were in Gainesville, I might pick Florida outright. But this game's in Knoxville. I think they're going to benefit that. It's also a late start in Knoxville, 6 p.m., so it's a night game. I mean, Tennessee knows darn well what can happen there. They played the same type of game last week at Arkansas, and look what happened. All right, let's go on because obviously Texas plays Florida later this year. Texas also plays Georgia next week, a week from today. Mississippi State goes to Georgia. Georgia, of course, favored by 33.5, according to the line at MyBookie. This game's at 3:15, so it starts just after the Texas game starts over on ABC. What do you think, guys, about this Mississippi State-Georgia contest? Are you going to be looking for any tells? That's going to be my question. Any tells for what Texas and how Texas might handle Georgia versus how they played Mississippi State and vice versa? Anything like that you're looking for?
More than anything, if Mississippi State has success running the football against Georgia, I think that might just mean Mississippi State has a good running offense. Maybe, you can use the transitive property, and I know, Bobby, we don't like bringing up the TP theory here, but, it does give you an idea of how each team will stack up against a common opponent that's only, about 2 weeks apart from playing one another. That means a little bit to me. Now, what I want to see from Georgia is, will they be able to have the explosive play offensively? It's been absent this entire year. It's the reason why I'm down on Georgia. They don't have, George Pickens, a Brock Bowers, a Ladd McConkey, guys that have been able to stretch the field and create after the catch. And now they're down another wide receiver because these guys can't stay out of trouble. So does that mean they rely more on ETN out of the backfield? Perhaps. But in a game like Texas in a few weeks, you're going to need your all-world NFL caliber quarterback to be the one leading the way. I just question if they have the guys out wide to, get loose. Mississippi State will be a good indication if they do or do not have those guys.
Rob, what about you? What you looking for?
I kind of want to see, Mississippi State, and see how good they are. They challenged Texas a week ago. I want to see if they can make it competitive for how many quarters against Georgia. That's kind of what, because I'm still trying to figure out Texas too. I don't know if all of our questions will be answered about Texas versus Oklahoma because Oklahoma's offense is so inept. So I'm, going into that Texas-Georgia game, and I hate to be looking ahead like that. I'm still trying to figure out who the Longhorns are. So I agree with CJ. There is a lot of transitive property I think you're going to be looking at here with this matchup. And I don't know if Georgia has an offensive identity. It's weird.
I agree.
I agree with that, and I think that's part of their offensive coordinator is not someone that I feel is as strong as offensive coordinators they had in the past with Todd Monken.
Yeah,
I think they do as well. His play calling kind of really mixed well with the talent that they had, very pro style aspect of that. I think we all expect Georgia to roll in that game. The question is, what do we learn from it, essentially? All right, Vandy, Kentucky. Texas plays Vandy, obviously, next or 2 weeks from now in Nashville. They play Kentucky later in the year in Austin. I thought this was one of the more big surprises to me from a line perspective. Vandy beat Alabama fair and square, in my opinion. They did. There were some elements of it that were, I don't know if luck's the right word, but the ball bounced their way, the kind of ricochet interception return. But Vandy moved the ball consistently. They stopped Alabama consistently. Yet the line on this game, according to my bookie guys, 13.5 in favor of Kentucky. I mean, can Kentucky score that much? You know, if I don't know. I mean, this line, and maybe the bookies aren't valuing Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt enough. I thought that was a large line, because it seems like to me they're betting that Vandy reverts to form. Yeah, you know what I mean? They go back. Rob, what do you think?
I mean, Vandy is close. I mean, this is how close Vandy is to being 5-0. Remember, they allowed a touchdown with 15 seconds left at Georgia State, kind of still figuring out who they were with a new quarterback, new system and everything. And that was a 36-32 loss. And then they lost in overtime to Missouri. Now, that's because Missouri, I think, was revealed as a fraud, or at least a pretender, by the Aggies. But I mean, that's how close they are to being a 5-0 team. They kind of remind me of Arkansas in that respect, because Arkansas was like, they had a overtime loss, I think, to Oklahoma State. That real close loss to the Aggies, a one-score loss to the Aggies. Turns out, boom, and they have their breakout game and beat Tennessee. And same thing with Vandy, right? They were trending. They were figuring some things out. And that's one thing you really can't quantify, how teams get better and how quickly they, that process happens. I think they got something that they can bottle and try to replicate at Vandy. I don't think it was just a flash in the pan. I think they're building towards something. I watched that game. I watched it twice. I went back and watched it like, man, but they out-schemed Bama. I mean, we can get into it in detail. They out-schemed Bama. They out-coached Bama. And then some guys went out there and outplayed individually. They went out there and played some of those blue chip guys. And that's why they won that game. And I think they can replicate that. Can they? Now, emotionally, have they been here before as a program? No. How do they handle emotionally? You got Pavia doing interviews now nationally, talking about his NIL endorsements he's going to get. It's a different mindset than the underdog. We're grinding. Nobody is on our side. Even in our own stadium, the opponent's fans outnumber our fans. That's a different mindset than going there now. And it's like, hey, man, everybody knows we're pretty good. And you're not sneaking up on nobody anymore either. Nobody's taking you lightly anymore. So I just wonder how they respond to that. But in terms of the ball and the culture and the program building, that moment we saw, I think that was substantive. I think that was real.
CJ, let me guess. Are you going to take the other side of this?
No.
It's got a sneaky suspicion. What are you going to do?
But I can. And
no. Tell us what you think.
Here's what I think. I think Kentucky is one of the better defenses in all of the SEC. And is that crazy to say? Maybe. But coming into the year, we knew that they had an all SEC caliber player on all three levels of their defense, right? With Dumas Johnson at linebacker, Maxwell Harris at cornerback, and then obviously Deion Walker might be one of the best defensive linemen or edge rushers, whatever you want to call him or put him in the category of, in all of the country. He's a stud. And because of that, Kentucky is freed up at every single level of their defense to play talented football freely. And that's important in a game like this with a team that has a lot of offensive confidence right now. We've already seen so far Ole Miss scored about 17 points. Georgia scored 13, all against Kentucky. I know South Carolina kind of got away, but listen, if you're going to do that against what is expected to be two of the better offenses in the country or even in the SEC this year, I'm got to be a believer in this Kentucky defense. And I think that's where that point spread comes from. But with that said, you have a better quarterback on the side of Vanderbilt. You have a better game manager. You have a better game breaker with that quarterback as well. Does that overcome what the talent deficiencies is? Well, it worked in their favor a week ago against Alabama. But I think that blueprint to stop Kentucky or stop Vanderbilt is now out. Did they use all of their tricks against Alabama? Maybe. I like Kentucky in this game. I think that this is a comeback down to earth for Vanderbilt. And listen, I'm the first to jump on a train or a stock or a bet way too late, right? And it's just all losses from here. But I'm being smart. I'm taking the other side. I like Kentucky in this game.
You like Kentucky in the game? Okay.
Yep.
I thought you were going to go backwards. All right. The other two games in the SEC that I do want to mention briefly before we move on to the big national game of the day. Alabama favored by 21 over South Carolina. You got to think Jalen Milroe and the Alabama guys are chomping at the bit to take care of business against South Carolina, a South Carolina team that has not come back after seeing their quarterback go out against LSU. They just haven't bounced back, had a bad loss last week as well. That is the 11 a.m. get that on ABC that precedes Texas today. So if you're watching the TV this morning, you're going to see South Carolina, Alabama on ABC before the Texas game. All right, after Texas and Oklahoma, you will see Ole Miss and LSU on ABC. That game starts at 6:30. Ole Miss going to Tiger Stadium and still favored by 3.5.
Wow.
What do we think about Brian Kelly and what he's doing in Baton Rouge? If he's getting beat by Lane Kiffin, that's not what's called for in Baton Rouge. What do we think here?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the ultimate loser leaves town type of game this weekend, especially in terms of the SEC championship and the pursuit to Atlanta. But even more than that, I think if you lose this game, considering the teams that each have to play after this weekend, your season and your path to the playoff is very, very minute. So is that LSU team, is that program taking the right steps? It could be. Right, they have a great quarterback in Nussmeier. I think Kyron Lacey's a tremendous wide receiver, but that defense is bad. It's bad. It's even worse now after all of the injuries to the front seven. No more Harold Perkins. They lost their star nose tackle already this year. But with that said, are we to buy back into Ole Miss?
Yeah,
that's the big question. And can Ole Miss do that on the road? Even bigger question. And Ole Miss isn't beating kind of the fruitcake allegations anytime soon. That's a soft program. It always has been. And right now I'm led to believe it always will be until they go out on a road to Death Valley, Tuscaloosa, Athens, and show that they can beat a team of that caliber. I think I like LSU.
What about you, Rod?
Yeah, LSU, I know Lane Kiffin, to me, I think his team really epitomizes kind of my opinion of Lane Kiffin. I don't know if I can take Lane Kiffin seriously. I do like him as a coach. I like his methodology. I like his philosophy offensively, but I don't know if I can take him seriously as a big time head coach. I don't know if I've ever been able to do that. And that may be just going back kind of Al Davis days. Maybe Al Davis really tainted my view of Lane Kiffin. And I don't know if I can take Ole Miss seriously either. LSU as a home dog. I'll give you a number. LSU has won 7 of its last 9. As a home dog against teams not Alabama. The home dog in LSU, that's too easy to me. I would probably lean LSU in that matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised. Ole Miss got so much talent. There's a ton of talent on that Ole Miss squad, man. And the only thing that really kind of holds them back is, like I said, I don't know if I can take Lane Kiffin serious. I'm laughing just thinking about it.
I'm wondering if Jackson Dart is truly an elite quarterback or a system of the offense. That's something I think that's fair to ask. All right, we're going to go now. Thanks to MyBookie for sponsoring that SEC breakdown segment. We're going to go now to the big game of the week nationally. I want to get just real quick thoughts here. Ohio State goes to Oregon. It's at 6:30 on NBC, so after the Texas game. Ohio State goes into Oregon. It's in Autzen Stadium in Eugene, but Ohio State is a 3-point favorite. Talking about home dogs here, Rod B and CJ. Y'all think, and by the way, Ohio State offensive coordinator is former Oregon head man Chip Kelly, returning to the scene of the crime. Y'all think Ohio State or Oregon here? It's time for see whether Dan Lanning's really got the Ducks going and if Ryan Day is still on third base, or is he going to try to make it home this year? What are y'all thinking?
Rod, go ahead. I want to follow this one up.
Yeah, it's usually you should be able to trust Ohio State in big games, not against their rival Michigan.
Michigan.
So I'm kind of leaning Ohio State in this one. There's also something going on with Oregon in the red zone. Go check out their red zone numbers. Dylan Gabriel, all of his interceptions have come in the red zone, I believe. He's got 3 of them. They've all come in the red zone. Very weird. And I don't know if they're totally in sync. They're getting better offensively, but there's something going on. They got an 81% red zone conversion rate. They're 94th in the country. You kind of remind, like Texas last year, where you're like, what the hell is going on? That makes no sense. That doesn't track like all the talent they have, and then being deficient in the red zone. That's kind of what's happening there at Oregon. I'm not sure why. And it's Dylan Gabriel. It's on him. Like I said, his interceptions, all of them have come in the red zone. He's tied for the most red zone interceptions by a quarterback in the country. So that's something I worry about, especially going against Ohio State. Ohio State's defense is legit. I'm a big fan of their defensive coordinator. Obviously, from his time there at Oklahoma State, we know him well. I'm taking Ohio State in this one, because if they don't win, then think about the repercussions and the conversation, the narrative that's going to make the headlines if Ohio State is not up to par after everything that was done this offseason to juice that program.
Ooh, ugly.
Yeah, I love Ohio State in this game. I love it. And maybe, again, I'm falling victim to believing in Ryan Day in a big game. Is he more of that James Franklin mold versus, the Urban Meyers of the world that came before him at Ohio State? Maybe. But, man, I was a believer that Ohio State had the most talented roster in college football coming into the year. And that was before factoring in what we've seen already from Jeremiah Smith, who I believe could be in the conversation for being the best overall wide receiver in the country, with the likes of Ryan Williams and Luther Burton and Tetsuroya McMillan. He's been tremendous. And every week he's getting more and more trust of Will Howard in this offense. We've seen the highlight reel plays with the one-handed catches in the end zone. He's been tremendous. I think they feed him in this game, which will be really interesting to see if Jabbar Muhammad is on him to start the game or shadows him at all in that game. That's, the matchup within the matchup to watch in my eyes. But more than that, I think if Will Howard is the guy that you don't want to believe in right now, you're going to believe in the Ohio State offensive line and running game in this game specifically. Again, look at what Ashton Jeanty and Boise State did week 1 against Oregon. They ran all over him. And I know Ashton Jeanty's done that against everybody, but in a game like Boise State against Oregon, you're expecting Oregon to come out and dominate those trenches, and they just haven't done that so far. I really like Ohio State to travel with that offensive line, that running game, and those defensive players to come away with the win and awesome.
These are 2 former Big 12 quarterbacks going head-to-head. And I was trying to check earlier today whether or not Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel had actually ever faced off. And they haven't, because OU and Kansas State didn't play in 2023. And in 2022, Adrian Martinez was actually the quarterback for Kansas State and beat Dylan Gabriel during, I think it was only his second or third start at OU, 41-34. Look, I think that both of these quarterbacks are functional for what their offenses call for. I'm not sure either of them are championship quarterbacks. And whoever doesn't turn the ball over, I think is going to win this game. And you can say what you want. I think Dylan Gabriel takes a lot better care of the ball than Will Howard, typically. Will Howard has been known to put the ball in the harm's way. Now, maybe Ohio State has such good players that their skill talent kind of overwhelms them, their offensive and defensive line. But I don't know. There's something about it that I am not a Will Howard fan in big games. I think he turns the ball over too much. All right, there's also a couple other games, just briefly. Penn State favored by 4 goes to USC. That's another big one in the Big Ten now. Kansas State, Colorado is the night game. A lot of people are going to be watching 9:15 on ESPN. Kansas State actually favored in that game by 3.5, according to my book. All right, that'll be it for today's Saturday conversation. We'll be back today with a lot more our coverage of the Texas Longhorns versus Oklahoma game. We've got not only the Saturday convo here, but we've got the tailgate coming at the State Fair here in the next hour and a half, 2 hours. Jerry Hamilton and I will be there. Thank you for coming out if you get a chance. That's at the Yingling tent. And then the watch with us begins right at 2:15 Aaron Hogan's going to lead you through that. And then we'll have the post-game live, myself, Rod Babers, as well as Brian Robeson. I'll be talking to you about that. Join us all day today for live coverage of what should be a Texas victory, we're hoping. All right, for Rod B and CJ Vogel, thank you also to our sponsor, MyBookie. Hook 'em, guys. Have a good day.
Hook 'em.